Jason, welcome and happy Friday. It's so good to connect with you.
Happy Friday and happy Halloween too. We were just talking offline about Halloween costumes and crazy antics that I used to do when I was 16. So I love that and I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. Tell us about the joke that you played when you were younger.
So what I Halloween was one of my favorite holidays growing up. And I used to love dressing up. I would find like the craziest, weirdest costumes. Like one year I dressed up as Jesus. Another year I dressed up as a pregnant nun. There was another year, I forget what other costumes. I had some crazy costumes, but I used to go with my friends and we would get all dressed up a week before Halloween and we would go around the neighborhood and we would ring people's doorbells and people would open the door and we'd be like, trick or treat. And they'd be like, what are you? It's not Halloween yet. We're like, okay, we don't care. Can you give us some candy? And so we used to love just like playing jokes and like kind of messing with people a little bit. So that was my experience of Halloween. And now, being much older, we're kind of one of those families that just like turn off the lights. I feel terrible because we don't have kids. So we just kind of like hide inside and we're like, we don't want to pass out candy. We try to pretend we don't exist on Halloween. So it's changed quite a bit as I've gotten older, but I still remember those crazy days when I was 16.
That's funny. I think, okay, you have enough time today to get candy and not turn
Yeah.
on the lights and actually participate. And you know what? I was just thinking as you were talking about kind of instigating and provoking people to think, I think that has translated into what you're doing and the way you're running your business today. Can you tell us a little bit more about what it is that you do and are focused on right now?
I That was a beautiful segue, I will say that. So I'm a business mentor. I help people grow and scale businesses at all different stages, from folks who are in the earlier days really getting started and launching their business to multi-seven-figure founders and everything in between. So the work I really do is helping entrepreneurs turn their passion and their purpose into profit or grow and scale and impact more people through the work that they do. And on a deeper level, how do we do that from a place of alignment? How do we do that from a place that allows us to show up as who we really are, to run a business that feels good? There's so many times, and maybe we'll get into this, because it sounds like your audience is a mix of folks who are either at nine to fives or maybe running their own businesses. So many times we take I know we've had this conversation, so many times we take this corporate box and this mindset and this way of thinking about running our lives into the journey of entrepreneurship. And so I think deep down, what people are really craving is freedom, authenticity, a way of showing up that feels like them, where they can be who they really are and make the impact that they feel called to make on their heart, and to run a super profitable, successful business that gives them the abundance that they really desire. So that is the work that I do, and the intersection of all of those things, really entrepreneurship and inner work and spirituality. And it's just something that I love, deeply love.
As you were naming all the things, I'm like, yes, 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 that's what we want, you know? And just to share a little bit more about with anybody who's listening is that we met through your work. I was a part of the collective, a program that you run, and I guess that kind of the spark, even going from the Halloween stories and the way you ran your ads, there was just that deep resonance. And you really, through your work, are inviting people to think and challenge some of the ways, no matter if you're building a career, right? Or building a business, that is a longing at their hearts, is that to feel like people want to feel more alive. So I'd love for you to share a little more of the inflection points and how have you gotten to that point yourself?
Well, I've been an entrepreneur my whole life. I've always been passionate about building and growing businesses. My first official business, I was 13 years old, and I was a big computer nerd growing up. And I used to love playing computer games. But back in those days, you would have CDs that you'd have to put in the computer in order to play your favorite games. And so whenever I had to play my favorite game, I would hunt for the CD and I'd have to find it usually in like the couch cushion or under the table or something like that. And it would take me 20 minutes to try to find these CDs so I could play the games that I wanted to play. And so one summer, I decided to learn how to computer program. And I built this software program that made it so it would trick the computer into thinking the CD was in the drive when it really wasn't. So you could play your favorite games without having to use the CD. So I called this program, it was called Virtua Disk, and I launched this thing online. I had to ask my dad for help setting up a payment processor because I was too young. I couldn't actually sign up for this. And so I set this thing up, and I'll never forget the first day I opened up my email. I was 13 years old, and I had this message, "You've made a sale." And as a 13-year-old kid, to be able to create something, to put it out into the world, and then to be paid for it, and to be able to make an impact in someone else's life who I never met personally, but whose life was changed in some small but meaningful way through the work that I did, that really changed for me my whole mindset and perspective around what was possible. And so since then, I've really been obsessed with this whole thing of online marketing and building communities. And when I was in high school, I got really into playing music and writing songs. And I built this big platform online on MySpace. And I learned so much about how to build online communities. And I had this audience of 20,000 people that were following me on MySpace that I had built and created. And I learned about marketing and how to connect with people and how to send messages that would get people to pay attention and listen to my music, which was the thing that I really wanted at that time. And then coming into college, my junior year of college, that summer, I got really sick. And I ended up in a doctor's office in Harlem. It was like 126th Street in New York. I was going to NYU at the time. And this doctor looks me in the eyes and she says, "Jason, I think you have cancer." As a 21-year-old kid, that turned my life upside down. And so I went from going to college, my senior year, about to start, to moving back home with my family in Northern California and going through treatment. And a year later, I relapsed and went through a bone marrow transplant. And my whole life took this very different turn. And around that time was really the time that I started asking deeper questions. As someone who was coming out the other side of that experience, really having faced my own mortality very clearly, and also not really knowing what was up ahead and feeling this question mark for years. And I've been in remission for about 10 years now. But for anyone who's been through that journey of cancer, it's not like they just give you a clean slate and you're good to go. It's kind of like for 5 years you're in this waiting game. And so I didn't really know whether or not I was going to live through my 20s. And I think being in that place really drove me to ask some deeper questions and to dive deeper into my purpose and why I was here, what I wanted to do with this life that I had, because it felt really precious for me. And it didn't feel like a given anymore. And that also really propelled me into the path of spirituality. And it also propelled me into this deeper questioning around business and my role as an entrepreneur and how to create and market and sell from a place of integrity and love and service, and how to also support other people who are changing the world through the journey and the path of entrepreneurship. So all these different things that I was exploring, my own passion for entrepreneurship and marketing, this deeper dive that I had taken into spirituality and really starting to understand myself on a deeper level, this deep desire that I had to want to make my life matter and to make an impact and to help people and to serve people. All of these things and these threads came together in a way that I don't think I could have planned. It wasn't like I had a map for it, but I started listening and really following this deeper intuitive pull that I had, which started with, I mean, it took many different forms, but it started with initially it was helping musicians, and my first big online coaching business after college was teaching other musicians how to record their own music because that was the thing that I had learned how to do and that I was really good at. And then I spent some time as a director of sales with a very close friend of mine, helping him grow and scale his coaching business. And then I transitioned into mentoring and coaching other entrepreneurs. And it also took a while to really start to integrate those deeper aspects of my purpose and mission into that work around really seeing the journey in business as this inside out, more spiritual path, which is really where we have met in that intersection as I've really, tapped in more deeply to that. So you mentioned inflection points. It's been a winding journey, but those are definitely some key pieces of it that looking back, I love how Steve Jobs says you can't connect the dots looking forward, you can only connect them looking back. And it's like I could never have imagined that I'd be here doing this work today, but I'm so incredibly grateful. I feel more aligned, more in purpose, more fulfilled in the work that I do than I ever have in my entire life. And I think a lot of it has just been a result of asking deeper questions, of listening deeply to that voice that's within me and following that, even when it was scary and even when it meant giving up the safety and the comfort of what I knew, and just continuing to walk that path over years.
Mm.
So it's been really cool to see what's emerged as a result of that.
Wow. First of all, thank you so much for sharing it. And I'm so sorry what you went through. And it's kind of what many people go through, right? Like many people start asking those questions and really waking up to kind of the depth of life and questioning things and starting to dive deeper when they hit the wall, right? When they get brought on their knees. And many times it's later in life, 30s, 40s, and you were so young.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I feel like that's why you have such a strong signal because we can go 10, 20 plus years, right, building something. And again, it doesn't really matter if it's your own thing or if it's a career, um, but essentially building something outside in, right? Following somebody else's framework, somebody else's structure, somebody else's rules. And you were kind of propelled, thrust into it at such an early age. Um, and I also think that many times when something like that happens, something that really shatters some of that surface level kind of attention and the mechanisms, the going through the motions. It's also sometimes where the work can seem, well, work probably gets to be in the background. It's no longer the front and kind of the first priority. So as you were going through that, when were you even able to start back thinking about anything else outside of your health, right? And everything like the mortality and everything else that was going on.
It definitely wasn't something I was looking at when I went through treatment. And I was grateful that I had a family. My parents were able to support me through that chapter. Shortly after I came out of that experience, I launched another business. And in retrospect, I think a lot of that was more driven from this place of distraction than it was from deeper alignment.
Mhm.
Because coming out of that experience, there was so much unprocessed emotion and a lot of things that I was just really afraid to look at. And there was also this big question mark of, am I going to survive this? That it just felt much easier to just distract myself. And so it took a long time. I think it took years to really move through a lot of that, to be able to do that work with myself, to be able to heal and really alchemize that experience into something that I could see as a gift, which I do today. I always tell people, I'm like, I wouldn't wish it on anyone, but I'm incredibly grateful for that experience because it made me who I am. And everything I'm doing today and the impact that I get to make is a direct result of that experience that I've been through. So it took a while. Initially, I think a lot of, and to your point, I think a lot of people, at least my experience is most people in life are leading lives from the outside in, which I would define as they're on a path that is somebody else's path. It's the path that society, ascribes to them. It's, go to school and then college and then get a job and then climb up the ladder and get that promotion. For me, I think what was so powerful about going through that experience when I was in my early 20s was it was really this very rude awakening, but also incredibly clarifying because I started to see that all of these things that I thought were solid actually are just completely made up. Like even the medical system. Like I thought, I was going to go into a doctor's office and people were going to know what was going on with me. It took me a while to figure this out that the doctors had no clue as much as I didn't. And they may have had some tools, but and watching my parents go through that and realizing that all of these things that I had just assumed were these solid, immovable, unshakable things in life were not. And I think the last 10 years for me have really been waking up more and more from that like matrix and however you want to define it. We look all around us, all these systems and structures, and whether it's the way that we experience work or things like working hours, which I've deeply questioned over the last few years and really come around to the other side and realize like I actually don't subscribe to this idea of 9 to 5 or Monday through Friday. And when I let go of those things, like my business became so much more fluid and enjoyable. And all of these constructs that we live within as human beings, we just don't step back and we don't question them. We just think that's the way it is, or our economy, it's the way it is, or the state of the world, it's the way it is. And most people are living within the context of all of those things. And for me, that experience helped me step out of the context and to see it all more clearly and to start to question it. And I think there's real freedom in that. And it's the beginning of also really being able to define and chart your own path, which really is what I feel I'm doing. Like, I don't feel like I'm following anyone else's formula. I'm
Yeah.
following my own.
Yeah.
And yeah, and it's a beautiful feeling. And it feels like being alive.
And that is the magnetic piece. And that is, it's kind of like you are serving as a light. If you think of what are they called? Lighthouses or something, right? That at night beat, and that's what's attracting because people want that. Somewhere inside of us, that's where the resonance comes in. For anybody who has that call within that there must be something more, right? They are hearing the nudges of their essence, but it
Yeah,
takes a lot of courage to walk that walk.
it does. Yeah, it really does. It's
But I could
terrifying.
see how you're already so this beautiful experience that you shared as a 13-year-old, right? With that CD and the games, right? But those are already signs of you listening, right? It's a small thing, but you are listening to what's bubbling up for you, and you're following and you're figuring out this thing where you don't have to enter. And you saw how you can create something, right? On your own. And what does our school system? I'm thinking, about my son who goes to high school and that we need to all forgive ourselves for not being able to eject that easily from that system because year in and out, like they're not even teaching something like that, how you can create something online marketing, right? What are they teaching? Facts, formulas, history things, how to regurgitate. cram
Yeah.
in and regurgitate. They're not they're not encouraging, okay, what is really your essence? What is your own model? There's none of that going on. And then you go from that system into a university, into the workforce. It's like exactly the matrix that you described. So it takes tremendous force, and that's why we have to go through a divorce. We have to go through, bad relationships. We have to go through health scares, you name it, by 40, 50, most people have gone through some sort of an experience, right? It's not exactly the same for anybody, but that shakes you. And it's almost like your essence is like, if you're not listening, it's gonna force you in indirect ways.
Yeah, that's the beautiful thing about life. It's like first it's a little whisper, and then if you don't listen to the whisper, then it gets louder and louder and louder. And life is, I love this, the way it's created, because life's intention through us is to evolve and grow. And that is what we're meant to do, and to be in alignment with who and what we really are. And that's what life is trying to do through us all the time. It's like there is a, I call it like it's this experience I have of like life is a river. It wants to flow through us. There's something wanting to flow through each and every one of us. And most of us are so cut off from that, we don't actually even remember what that feels like. But maybe we felt it in moments, or maybe we felt it, in those moments where it just feels like time slips away and you're doing something you enjoy so much, and hours go by and you look up at the clock and you're like, oh my God, I can't believe it's been 3 hours. Like, I love this so much. And most of us experienced that as kids because there wasn't all the pressure or the perceived pressure of I need to make money, or the scarcity complex that we have around, the fact that we need to provide for ourselves and all these things that we layer on top of life. And so we get cut off from that. We get cut off from that. And we get indoctrinated into a whole set of systems, to your point. I mean, the school system itself is a relic of the Industrial Revolution. And so it's built to create factory workers in a model where we no longer need factory workers. So, I mean, I think it is what it is, but it definitely doesn't teach us to be creative and to tap into our own inner essence, to your point. So it is an unwiring for most people. And most people have to, like, we have to remember how to listen. We have to remember what it feels like to be in alignment, and how to trust that inner pull and that inner voice, and what that inner voice even sounds like, because most of us are so cut off from it that we can't discern that. And it does take time, and it does take courage and faith and trust and being able to meet the fear. There have been many moments through my journey. I've talked about this about 18 months ago because I really feel like this chapter has been another stage of this evolution, where I had built this business serving primarily coaches that was in some ways aligned, but it was very much focused on the surface level of business and helping people with marketing and growth and all of that. But I wasn't really talking about any of the stuff that we're talking about now, or spirituality, or these deeper aspects that I knew my heart really wanted to be integrated into the work that I was doing. And it got to a point where I remember I was in Napa with a mentor of mine, and we're in this villa up in the mountains, and it's me and like a bunch of other seven-figure entrepreneurs. We're all circled up in this space, and my mentor turns to me and he looks me in the eyes and he says, Jason, if you had $5 million in the bank, is this the business you'd be running? And it was one of those questions that, and I love asking my clients this question today, because I think that's a great way to get into like, what is your purpose, or what is alignment for you? If you weren't worried about money, because most of us, we don't realize this, but most of our lives are driven by this silent fear of scarcity, of lack, of I'm doing this thing because I'm afraid if I were to do the thing that my heart is really pulling me to, then I won't be supported. So that question I love because it gets to the heart. And so he asked me this question, and I realized in that moment, I was like, oh, it was one of those questions. You just ask it, and it's like, I can't ignore this anymore. And so I knew I had a choice to make in that moment. I was like, I can keep doing this thing that is very profitable on paper, but isn't feeding the deepest part of me, or I can walk away and build something new. And I chose the latter. And so the past 18 months for me have really been this reimagining of the work I do on an even deeper level and really walking through the fire financially around that and facing a lot of fear that I had around not being supported and not being taken care of and letting go of a lot of the attachment that I had to money as a form of safety, which I think is underneath a lot of what stops people from pursuing their passion or their purpose is this we've attached money to safety. We've externalized our own safety. We've said, I need this thing in order to feel safe. And so the moment it gets threatened, we go into high gear and we end up scrambling back to the safety and the comfort of the thing that we think we need in order to survive. And I'm not saying there isn't like practicality to making enough money to be able to support yourself. And my belief is in following that deeper pull that we all have inside of us, life will support the move towards expansion and the listening to that guidance. And I've seen how in this new chapter, as I've stepped out the other side, I'm like, our business is growing faster than it ever has before. It took me walking through like 12 months of, I mean, our revenue dropped by like 80%. And this is at the same time that my partner and I moved to this beautiful home in Boulder, this expansive upgrade that was like 3 times our old rent. So there was this massive upgrade in lifestyle, and yet my income had taken a massive hit. But I felt so connected to that deeper voice within me that was just telling me to keep going. And I got you, and I'll support you through this transition. But it was really hard. There was a lot of fear. And what I learned through that chapter was that my capacity to continue to choose faith over fear again and again and again and again, and to continue to walk in lockstep with that deeper calling, that through that, abundance comes and support comes and alignment comes and fulfillment comes. But it is a big leap of faith. And for that person who's on the edge of the job that they know they don't want to be in anymore, or they're running a business that they know is not the expression of their deepest gifts, and there's something within them that if they check in and tap in a moment, they can feel that voice that's pulling them to something. This is your invitation to trust that.
And thank you for sharing. It's a beautiful example of like two opposites, right? Of the fear and kind of what you're seeing in parts of your physical reality, right? Income and, clients, now letting go of clients and the past models. And then also, um, what you mentioned, about moving into a new home. And there's just so much to hold in the same moment. And we want to hold the goodness, right? We want to hold the, usually we are only open to, or we would prefer to only hold the positive aspects of that experience.
Right? You're like, I just want to double my income, but I don't want to walk through the fire. I don't want to go through that. I want to make more money. I want to have more passion and fulfillment and purpose, but I don't want to do anything that's going to be uncomfortable.
Yeah,
And
Lilo,
I'm like,
forget
well,
that. Like blowing your life like up like that.
yeah. And that's why most people choose the safety and security and comfort of what they know, even when it's not really serving them. And they will gladly accept a quiet form of deadness inside because that feels safer than taking a leap and being brave.
The biggest regret of the dying is I wish I had lived a life true to myself. I mean, this
Yeah.
gave me, as you're speaking, like I feel the deadness, right? That the impact of that, the really impact of that, like in me, in my own, and for everybody. And I think this is what keeps us going, right? Even like if we stuff it down for a decade, for 2 decades, right? That knowing, and I think it starts like the most courageous step you can take is that when you went back to that question, what your mentor asked, right? Is that would you do this if you already had it all? And I invite anybody listening to answer because you don't have to shout it from the rooftops. You don't have to say it to anybody, but it starts with you. Just being honest and acknowledge, like saying it to yourself, like answering that question.
Yeah. And it is courageous to even ask that question
Yeah.
because most people will do anything to avoid that question. We'll
Yeah, the biggest,
distract ourselves, we'll spend hours on social media, we'll fill every single minute of our lives with noise so that we don't have to face that.
yeah, the biggest thing is I'm busy. I don't have time for this, right? I have breakfast to make, kids to take to school, then work, then dinner, then pick up whatever activities, and like, and every day, right? We're in this wheel, but is it true? Like, have you looked at your screen time?
Yeah, absolutely. And on the other side of this, I mean, part of the gift of spirituality for me has given me this broader awareness around my perspective on who I am and connecting to a deeper relationship to my life and my relationship with God, and this realization that I'm taken care of and like I'm supported. And I'm also this like infinite being that gets to exist in a much larger context. And for me, that has helped loosen a lot of the fear. And so there's this sense that I have where it's like, I'm set, I'm good, I'm taken care of, I'm supported by life itself. I think Albert Einstein once said I love this. It's like one of the most important questions you can ask yourself is the universe friendly?
Mhm.
And most people think the universe is not friendly. Most people think they have to hustle and grind and push and survive. And most of the world is in that frequency. But when you poke your head above that and you're like, actually, that's just a story I'm telling myself, that's just the matrix of the world.
Mhm.
And the truth is that we all are taken care of, that we're supported, that we're guided, that we have access to a form of intelligence and wisdom within each and every one of us that wants the best for us. That being able to, for me, tapping into that has given me this larger perspective where it's like, I feel so set and so taken care of. What do I want to create? What do I want to give? What do I want to share from a place of contribution and impact? And what's the highest capacity that I have to serve? And that reframe for me changed everything because I realized that in that, all my needs are met and I'm taken care of abundantly. The moment you shift from what do I need to do to survive and how do I build my life around survival, which is where most people are, to actually, what if I didn't need to chase survival? What if survival was just here? It's like I'm taken care of. And then you're like, well, what do I want to create? What do I feel excited to share? And then, like, wow, you're just in a completely different space. And everyone wants to be around you, and everybody wants to pay you money, and everybody wants to be a part of it because it feels so good to be around you because you're in a different frequency.
Yeah, and it emanates. You have a strong signal. That's what I meant. And I think I mentioned it earlier. I think I know definitely people can feel it. Tell me, how did you get there that life is for you? Not just conceptually, right? but in an embodied experience, especially going through cancer.
Well, I didn't feel that at all when I was going through treatment. I had no relationship to spirituality or God. I was raised Jewish, but I would always say I'm Jewish. So my relationship to being Jewish growing up was I used to I had a very close friend of mine and we used to sit in the front of the temple and we would just screw around the whole time during services and the rabbi would kick us out. And I remember he sent an email out to the congregation once about us. He was like, he didn't use our names directly, but he was like, to the boys in the front row, you guys need to settle down because we're trying to have a service here. So I didn't have any interest in any of that stuff. But after going through treatment, I mean, I think the suffering of that experience and the pain of that experience opened me to seeking on a deeper level. And that was when I think it's just the openness to it was really the first thing. And then I discovered, I mean, I remember initially part of it was psychedelics for me. I remember reading this article in the New York Times talking about they were doing studies at like John Hopkins University and some of these other universities with folks who were terminal cancer patients, and they were administering like psychedelics and doing it in this very like clinical setting. And I remember watching these videos on the in the article about these people who had gone through this experience, and they were like, "I'm no longer afraid to die." And for me, at that period of my life, because I had so much fear, I just saw this and I was like, I need to have this experience too. If I can even experience like 1/10 of what they're talking about in these videos, this would change my life. And so that that drove me to my first psychedelics experience, which is really like the first experience that I ever had where I really connected on a very deep level to this larger awareness around who I was and that I'm not just my body and I'm not just this Jason separate thing, but actually I'm connected to everything, that I'm one with everything. And not as like a concept, but really to your point, as an embodied knowing. And since then, it was like something that I saw and I can't ignore. You know, it's just you experience that truth and it just becomes a part of you. And it's like I can try to forget it, but but now that I've had that experience, it's like I feel like I've woken up and I'm like, oh, this thing that I think is separate is actually not. And we're all really just connected. And I felt so much love and support in that experience that it just changed. It just changed me. And you know, a lot of it was like studying spiritual, you know, texts and learning more about these are, I mean, I tell people I'm very spiritual. I'm not religious. I think all religions are great and all have a different vantage point on truth. I'm not like a fundamentalist in the sense that I believe that one path is the only path. I think there are many paths. And I got really fascinated about all these different paths because I had touched something within myself and I wanted to understand it more fully. And so I started learning about all these different things and studying these different teachings, and it gave me a deeper understanding. And I remember hanging out in LA. I used to go, my best friends were, we used to all hang out at these meditation centers in Los Angeles. And so every weekend, every Friday and Sunday, we used to go and we'd just sit and we'd meditate together and then we'd talk for hours until like 2 o'clock in the morning. And so a lot of my experience in my 20s was this exploration of spirituality and this deeper and deeper connectedness to that dimension of life. And so for me today, it's just a practice. I mean, before I got on this interview with you, and I do this whenever I get on an interview or something, I just close my eyes and I say, God, I'm here to be used. I don't know what to say. Speak through me. It's not really my interview. That's how I see it. I'm not really here for me. I'm here for that deeper thing to move through me. And that's how I experience my life. And that's also how I experience my work and my business. So I stopped asking myself, what do I want to do? And I started asking myself, you know, God, and if that word doesn't resonate, you need life or universe or higher self or whatever word resonates for you. It's all the same thing to me. But I just started asking, what do you want? for me. And I started listening to that deeper thing and following that thread instead of the thread of my small self that was really just trying to survive and stay safe and protect and control and defend.
Mm.
And that wasn't an overnight shift. And it's, still something that I feel like I'm living into more and more every single day.
And I love that you say that because it is a deepening, and anybody, no matter, most people have started, people who are listening to the podcast, right? They probably already into many times 10, 15 years of their own, right? Spiritual journey and walking their own path. So I love, just somebody else sharing that it's not like sometimes hear these people say, oh, I went through it and now I'm like on the other side. Like in a year, I'm like, in a year, like I've been doing this for, like, I'm still walking the path and it's the next, level of deepening, the next level of embodiment, the next level of, like, I think I went through years too much seeking also. This is where like I clung on to different frameworks, Neil Donald, well, because spirituality also can start to get very conceptualized, a lot of people, clinging on again to other people's frameworks and just using them and ideas and as another system to inject, to plug yourself into. But I think at least the way I'm witnessing it is the shine in your eyes, the brightness of your personality, right? This aliveness is what really resonated with me was when you said your higher self, that you are there's you never that kind of that sense of love, I guess, that you experienced um years ago, that you like it's opened up a connection with you, with your own essence, with your higher self. And
Yeah.
it's allowing you to walk that walk. And it's like things are rearranging, puzzle pieces, are continually being put together, right? Brighter and brighter. And I think that's very encouraging. And I think for anybody else and for myself, it is a journey of listening and then deepening the listening, and then we take one step forward, two steps back, or whatever it is, um, but that it's okay. It doesn't have to be perfect as long as you are just even taking one step, every day, even going for a walk. Like for me, my church is the leaves now, the fall leaves, nature, just
Yeah.
exhilarating, magnificent.
Oh, I know. I'm also out here in Colorado and all the leaves are changing right now. And I love going on walks outside our neighborhood. It's so beautiful. So I used to live in California where nothing changed. It was like the same temperature every season. But I love what you said. And I think on a deeper level, it's the knowing that everything's always unfolding perfectly, even in what we think isn't perfect, right? So many times in life we're like, ah, I'm not where I need to be, or I feel like this thing is not working. And I've learned over time that even the things, and going through cancer really helped me see this more clearly because while I was in that experience, I was like, this is the worst thing that's ever happened to me. I can't imagine a reality in which I see this as a gift. But 10 years out, to look back on that experience and to say, even that thing that I couldn't understand in that moment, when I felt so lost and so out of place, that too served, that became part of the fabric of who I am today and the work that I'm doing today and the way that I get to serve and impact other people today. So even if you're unhappy in your career, even if you feel like you're off track, that too is a part of the tapestry of evolution and growth. And there's nothing wasted in life. It's all perfect. It doesn't mean we don't explore and listen and take action and shift things when maybe they're misaligned, but also the misalignment is a gift because it's through the contrast of misalignment that I know what alignment feels like. I wouldn't know what I'm experiencing now and the alignment and how good it feels had I not been through chapters of my journey where things felt really flat. And so it's a beautiful gift to experience that contrast.
I love that. Tapestry. And I love your like the playfulness. Also the playfulness of your energy. And I think this is also what we want. We think
Yeah, it's not all that serious. I actually had a conversation with a friend of mine it was last night or 2 nights ago. I was over there and we were hanging out. She's like, Jason, you're a little too serious. I can tell she actually helps people. She's like a coach and a therapist, and she runs these workshops called How to Play in the Dark. And so she's really good at play. And it was great for me because I can get very like serious and heavy sometimes around this, like I need to save the world and everything's broken. And it's just the awareness of like having a friend to be able to say, hey, Jason, like, you gotta lighten up a little bit too.
yeah.
So it helps me. And, I think everybody kind of slips into that sometimes too.
Yeah, totally. I love that. Yeah. So maybe their experience is, because sometimes we need like an external experience, right? To get out of our own overthinking, the fear, the forcing it, gripping it.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, that's a lot of the work that I do with people is just like letting go of control.
And that's why it's so unique because, like, let's say, okay, the freedom of entrepreneurship, the way, like, let's say you're in corporate and you totally feel like you're just, become a robot and not answering that call on your heart. But then it is so easy, right? The entrepreneurship, there's so much noise. Everybody is touting their system, their way as the way. So how would you tell, what would you be your advice to help somebody who has that sincere wish, desire on their heart to create something that's aligned where they can feel fully alive, that they start hearing their own next steps
Mhm.
versus being pulled in, right? Go from one model to again another, just an external model, because we will hear work hard, do this, do 500 things, and then it will work. But what we really want is to build something that we don't want to burn down, no matter what model.
I mean, it's a big question. And I will say for me, because I've been building businesses online for 20 years now, it has taken going through the journey that you just described and having, like when I first got started as an entrepreneur, for years, I took the mindset of I need to follow someone else's system. And I kind of went through that period of copying other people. I remember when I was in high school, I went through a phase, and my sister went through it too. I remember there was a phase where it's like we would dress up as like people that we knew are our best friends or whatever, and we'd kind of copy their style and their way of acting. And there'd be like a season when my sister went through this season where she was like, I want to be a tomboy. And so she borrowed my ice spiker gel. It was this colored gel she would put in her hair. She had like very long curly hair, and she would put this like gunky stuff in her hair. And she's gonna be mortified if someone hears this. But she would dress up as a tomboy, and she went through that chapter. And then maybe, and I went through a similar chapter. I had a friend of mine who was like very punk, and he used to wear like dark t-shirts and chains and baggy jeans. And I went through that period, and I copied, and we copied. And it was through the copying and being like trying different things on and being like, oh, this isn't aligned. This isn't quite me. That I was able to come out the other side and start to understand what my own alignment was and what it feels like. And so I think so many people are worried about missing alignment or going off the path. And I'm like, don't worry about that. Like, that's part of the path. So I think when you're a new entrepreneur, part of it is you come into programs, and there is a reality to the fact that there is like a conceptual set of skills
Mhm.
and tools and a understanding that I think is really important to running a business. And so if you've never had that experience before, it's helpful to seek mentorship or to invest in a program that can help you lay some of those foundations. But oftentimes I find with newer entrepreneurs, and I went through this too, the first thing that happens is we think there's only one way, and we try to find someone who can give us the one way because that feels safe and that feels certain in a world where there's lots of information and it feels very overwhelming. It feels really good for someone to say, here's exactly what you need to do. And if you do steps 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you're going to create success too. And that's what most people are selling online. So what happens is you go through that and then you're like, maybe some of this feels right for me, but actually some of it doesn't. And then you might hire another person who's like, this is the only way. And you're like, well, hold on a second. This first guy said there was this, that was the only way. And now you're saying there's this other way. And maybe you try that on and you're like, well, this maybe part of this feels a little bit better. And then you go to another coach and they got their own way. And the more I've done this, the more I've realized, which is why I no longer sell the idea that there is one way because it's just a lie. There's like 10,000 ways to do this. There's 10,000 business models. There's 10,000 ways of marketing and selling and structuring offers and creating value for other people. And so part of my thing is like the more I've done this, the more I've realized that every time I've tried to fit a large number of people into a box, the box always works for some people, but it doesn't work for other people.
Mhm.
And so at a certain point I said, well, maybe I should stop selling a box and just say, look, we're going to help you find your own alignment and we're going to pull from these different pieces and this different ingredients and ways of doing things, which is how I run my programs now. So it's less about here's the one way and more about how do we find your way. And that works. It also is more challenging in some ways because it means there's not like one path that you can send everybody down. So there's a lot there, but I would say if you're in an earlier stage of your journey, part of it is sometimes you just got to try things on and test things and experiment with things. And a lot of it isn't going to feel right at first. And it's through that journey of just trying things on, just like when I was a kid and I would try on different clothes and go through that season where I look back and I'm like, man, why was I wearing all these black t-shirts and chains and all this weird stuff? Like I had to go through that to come out the other side and say, well, what is me? What is authentic to me?
Mhm. Yeah. And there's comfort in kind of some of that, there's no way to the end but through. There's no way out but through. But some of it is also, I think, okay, so let's say somebody's working, right, and they're not fulfilled in their work and job. I think with the social media, like coaching and entrepreneurship is so in your face, right? So there's so many models and examples. But like, what would you say as good maybe reflection point or a testing mechanism? Because entrepreneurship it might not be your thing, right? It could be something completely else. It could be a writer. It could be, a traditional Chinese medicine practitioner. It could be like so many things. But I think now maybe it's my feed. But I feel like it's like coaching and entrepreneurship is being like now, like take yourself out of this will be the solution. But how does a person know what is the right direction to start steering and trying
Mhm.
for them?
Well, I think it's true that entrepreneurship is not for everyone. And I think it's also true that most of what we see on social media is marketing. So if you're selling a business launch program for new coaches, you're going to be like, are you tired of being unhappy at your 9 to 5? And this is your path to freedom. And I sold that for years. So I think there's a reality to the fact that what you're seeing is, that's the first thing. That doesn't mean that entrepreneurship's not for you. It just means that it's something that it's just like anything else. Like there's trade-offs to everything. There's some real benefits to entrepreneurship, and there's also some downsides. So I would say there's a couple things I would say. The first thing is I'm a big fan of like testing and trying. And so rather than launching a whole thing, you could just say like, how can I create a little experiment that will allow me to test out whether or not this is something that I really enjoy. So it could be just as simple as being like, you know what? What's the thing that I feel really excited about offering that I think would really create value for other people, would help someone solve a problem or help someone create, fulfill a desire in their life? Like for me, I would say my first real online business, there were others, but in 2016, I went to school for music. And I had been doing music in high school and playing songs, as I mentioned earlier, and building platforms online. And so I studied music in college. In particular, I studied recorded music. So I learned how to make records and I studied with all these amazing music producers. And so I had all this knowledge. And I also knew what it was like to be a home studio musician, like the kid that I was when I was in my teens, recording his own songs at home. And I was really struggling to make those songs sound good because it's not as simple as just plugging a mic in and then recording your guitar and you hear it and it sounds like what you hear on the radio. There's actually like a whole art and craft to making a record and making it sound really professional and like the music you hear when you like turn on the radio or Spotify. And so I had learned how to do this and I had a lot of information and knowledge. And I also knew that there was a group of people out there who had a very specific problem. They were like me when I was trying to record my own music, that I could help them with that knowledge. So I said, initially it was like, let me just start. I didn't even have something to sell. I was like, let me just start publishing videos and content online and teaching. And so I started a YouTube channel. And every week I would record videos where I would say, here's some helpful tips if you want to make your music sound better. Here's this thing that I learned, or here's this little hack that not a lot of people know about. And I built an audience just doing that every single week. And then at some point I was like, well, maybe I could sell something to them. So I launched a course and people bought it. And I was like, wow, this is so cool. I can create value by just finding that intersection between the thing that I'm passionate about, the skills that I have, and also a group of people who have a very clear problem or desire that I can help them with through those passions and those skills. And that's basically been the loop that I feel like I've been in for most of my journey in work, is just like, okay, I learn how to do a thing and then I teach the thing. And then maybe like when I started doing business mentorship, it was like, well, I learned how to build a business. I've been doing this for a long time. I've really figured this out. I could probably do that same thing and just teach other people how to build businesses. So I think if you're like at a job, maybe you're unhappy, you're like, what's next? I would start thinking and I would ask yourself the question, like, what are my passions? What are my skills? And then can I brainstorm specific groups of people that might have like a clear problem or a desire that I could help them fulfill or solve through those passions and those skills? And then it's just as simple as like, what's the simplest way that I could test this or try this out? And I love just putting something out there into the world. And it's just as simple as being like, I don't know, maybe I could like come up with a 4-week group program that I sell. And I don't even have to build it first. I just reach out to all my friends and all the, maybe I'm helping moms build better relationships with their kids because I've been through that journey and I've done a lot of work on myself to really heal a lot of the stuff that comes up around the relationship between mom and child. And I've learned so much about that. So let me go reach out to all my mom friends and be like, hey, Sarah, I'm thinking about doing this like 4-week program where we meet, once a week for the next 4 weeks and with a small group of women. And I would love to take you through the journey of what it looks like to really build a more intimate, connected relationship with your son, Hunter. Like, is that something you'd want to hear more about? And you could just like soft sell it like that.
Yeah.
And it's so easy. And you don't even have to worry about like building a whole business. You just like build an offer. And through that journey, I think what you'll come to understand more fully is do I enjoy this? Do
Mm.
I feel like this is something that is an alignment for me? Do I feel energized by this? And if yes, you can double down on that and keep going.
I love we're coming back to play, treating it as play, and you can have like two Wednesday nights or whatever, Friday nights, right? And invite those moms, it's like just it's a beautiful way that you described how to create that experience, how to take the seriousness down, because I think the for those of us who are high achievers, we think, oh my gosh, so then as soon as I have the idea, I have to have like a course designed
I
on
gotta record a
this.
bunch of videos. I need a LLC. I need a landing page. I gotta have a whole curriculum that I build on. I'm like, no, you don't need any of that. There's a book called Lean Startup that I used to recommend quite a bit to early stage entrepreneurs. And it really walks through a mindset, a way of thinking about growing a business. And one of the things they talk about in that book is this idea of the minimum viable product,
Mhm, mhm,
which is what's the simplest, most basic thing that I can build in order to just take the next step
mhm,
and get feedback. So I often ask myself that question, like, what's the simplest thing here? Do I really need all these 10,000 other things? What do I actually just need to put something out there and sell it?
mhm,
Well, I probably just need a way for people to pay me. And I need some way of people understanding what it is, which could just be getting on a call with someone and just being like, here's what I'm doing.
mhm.
You don't even need like a course or a landing page or anything like that. You could just tell people about it. So, way to get paid and an idea. That's pretty much all you need to be in business. And it can be much simpler, I think, than most people make it.
I love that. And I also want to point out like the sandbox time, right? When you were talking about just leaning into whatever is that passion or that idea that bubbles up to explore, that maybe we don't need to expect like from video one to day two, like making an offer, right? There's a bit of a playtime, but we'll also clarify, right? We won't go from 1 to 1,000 in a day. And also that playtime, like whatever it's YouTube videos or Instagram posts, or as you create that material, it will also clarify.
Yeah. Yeah, because most people, I think the trap that most folks get into is we think that clarity comes from thinking and planning. And if I can just close my office door and sit down and meditate for the next 3 hours and connect with my spirit guides and get so clear on exactly what my life's direction is and my purpose is and exactly what I need to do next, that's not how it works. My experience is it's really just you being like, I kind of feel called in this direction. Let me do this. I mean, you've been through this because we launched the collective. This was membership community several months ago, which was very much this intuitive feeling that I had that I wanted to create this community. And it's been an awesome experience. And also, it's very much evolved lately when we decided to transition the whole thing into a completely new model, which is like a high ticket mastermind experience. And so you could say, well, Jason, that's a big shift. And also, wouldn't it have been better if you would have gotten clarity on that, like at the beginning? Maybe, but I just don't move through life like that. Like my thing is like, I get the little hit of impulse or whatever the intuition is. I just follow that thread. I take action. I ask myself, like, what's the immediate action that I can take? Not knowing how it's all going to work out, not having clarity. Most of the things I do, I don't know exactly what I'm going to do. I just feel called in a certain direction. And then as I move in that direction, I get more clarity and it emerges through just the journey of being in the ring and taking action. And I think that way of moving through the world it's it's uncomfortable sometimes, but it's the fastest way that I know to get to clarity.
Yeah, and it's like getting yourself out of the shackles and just leaning into more and more freeing yourself, like from all the
Yeah,
contracts. And it's hard to start to play.
it
It's,
is. Yeah. Well, because it was like beat out of us, most of us in school. Because
yeah.
most of school is this, it trains us to be perfectionists. Because if you think about, I remember when I was in English class and you write an essay, and it would be like you write the first draft, and then you write the second draft, and then you'd write the third draft, and you polish it up and check for every spelling error and make sure every single word was right, and then you turn it in, and then you get the grade. But life doesn't work like that. Life is much more like you write the first draft, you put it out there, you see what lands. Maybe it flops and you do something completely different, or maybe it lands and then you polish it up, or you do something else. And it's just more of this like evolutionary kind of playful dance of creation.
I one of my regrets now is that I didn't homeschool my son.
Yeah. I think I mean, I don't have kids, but I think I would have a hard time sending them to public school.
Yeah, because this is why we have to learn this in our 30s, in our 40s, in our 50s. And but it's good that we have the examples. I really appreciate you serving as a strong signal and inviting others to reconnect back because like some of this iteration, the way I see it that you're talking about is like it's like your essence, like whatever you call it, your soul, it's like a testing, like, are you listening, right? And if you take that first step, then it will, okay, start to talk a little more with you, like, because then you're like, oh, you're listening a little more, and because then it starts to become more, it starts to come through if you listen.
Yes, for sure. Yeah. I mean, that voice is so clear to me today.
Mhm.
And I still have chapters where like the last 2 weeks for me, it's been a little bit more quiet and I've been more in like a resting period. So I haven't done anything. I mean, not that I haven't done anything. I've still showed up but I haven't like created because my thing is like, I don't create from my mind anymore. So I wait for that guidance to tell me what to do next. It doesn't mean I'm passive and just like laying around. I still take action, but that thing is what leads my life. And it wasn't like that for me at first. At first, it was very difficult for me to hear, but then the more I listened, the quieter the voices of fear got in my mind, and the more that thread, that voice just becomes so clear. And then it's just that's where you're living from. That's been my experience. But it's just listening. And I love this too, and I'll share this with your listeners as an exercise because this is another thing that can help you tap into that. This is often a practice that I'll use when I'm making decisions. Because my experience is that life wants to expand through us, and that voice is always calling us to expansion. And so, fear, if you connect with your body, the thought of fear and the choice from fear will always feel smaller, and the choice from expansion or your essence, as you called it, will always feel bigger and more expansive. And so, what I do oftentimes when I'm thinking about making decisions is I'll give a great example of this. Because so my sister just got married and we are flying out next week to go celebrate with her and the rest of the family. And I was feeling into what gift I wanted to get her and what gift we wanted to get her for like a celebration. And I had a couple different options. And I wrote them all down on a piece of paper. And I looked at the first option and I noticed how my body felt. And I noticed how small or how big it felt. And then I looked at the second option and I noticed how small or big. And I noticed there was one option that when I would look at it, it just felt like my chest opened up a little bit and I felt like more expansive in my body. I was like, that's the option. That's what we're going to do. And so this is another way sometimes people are like, well, I can't hear the voice. I don't know what like my soul is calling me to. Sometimes when you're thinking about making a decision, because so many people make the decision from their mind, it's like we're so cognitive, we're so up here. But the body knows. The body is your source of guidance and wisdom. And you can actually feel the difference between making a decision from alignment, from your essence, from your soul, whatever word you want to use, versus from fear. And that's a practice that you can just write down two options on a sheet of paper, look at one, notice how it feels in your body, look at the other, notice how it feels in your body. It's never guided me in the wrong direction, I will say that.
Mm.
It's been a very useful practice.
I love that. Yeah, because we are like, what do? We don't know. We start to make these pros and cons lists from
Right.
cognition.
Which is all mental, it's all intellectual. And I'm
Yeah.
like, I don't live my life from the mind anymore. Because the mind's just going to create from what it knows, right? And it's mostly the time the mind's just trying to keep you safe and protect you. So if all you're doing is making decisions from your mind, you're basically just playing out the pattern of fear in your life. And your life mostly is just going to be a reflection of that.
And you know what just came to me? Also, like, as you are making these choices and we share the love for relationship, dating analogies, right? It's almost like it's career, work, relationship, all big areas of your life. It's like having the courage to lean into the sweetness of a direction that is actually good for you, good for your soul.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, yes, 100%. And to not know how that's going to unfold or where it's going to go, but to trust.
Yeah. And I think if you have to make 5,000 lists, it's a no.
Yeah, I will say I don't really make like pros and cons lists anymore. I used to be much more intellectual in how I would make decisions, but for the most part, that's how I make decisions today.
Mm. I love that. Yeah, there's place for the mind and it can beautifully go together. It's like one is like this bigger thing, this bigger experience, and the other one is like a I don't know, a tool or mechanism or something.
Yeah, I think that's well said. I experience my mind as a servant to my soul.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
most people, it's the opposite,
yeah.
which is why we feel disconnected and why we feel like our life lacks aliveness and it feels like we're just going through the motions because most of us are leading our lives from the mind. And when that shifts, when it's like, oh, my mind is very powerful and a useful tool, but it's not actually meant to drive the bus, it's meant to be in the passenger seat. And so when I put my soul in the driver's seat and let that be the thing that pulls me, and then the mind comes in and says, okay, well, when I get an inspired idea, like for example, the other night I was driving over to a friend's house and I had this really cool idea about a new live 3-day experience that I want to run called Sacred Prophet. So I'm driving and I'm feeling super excited about this. I'm seeing it all in my mind. I'm seeing, so I'm getting the download from my soul, right? And that's how you know you feel it because it's exciting and it feels expansive. And then so yesterday I sat down and I planned it out and I mapped out, okay, here's when the days are going to be. And so my mind comes in and it says, okay, well, how do we bridge this into the 3D world with form? And that to me is the relationship that we want to have between our mind and the universe. It's the universe is providing the direction and the guidance on like where we're going, and then the mind is coming in and like creating form around that.
Yeah. And how powerful together it's like fireworks, right?
It
It's like
is,
you don't
yeah,
need to negate the mind, but when you use it like in this powerful combination, then it's like you're on fire.
yeah, absolutely, yeah. And some people reject the mind as like spiritual. Some folks are like, well, there's no use for the mind, and I'm like, no, we have a mind. It's a beautiful thing. We in our Western world, we overuse it. We've gotten so identified with it, and we're so cognitive in our world that we have forgotten that it's a very useful tool,
Mm.
but it's not meant to be the thing that we use to lead our lives.
Jason, how can people find you, connect with you, and get more of you?
Yeah, so you can go to jasonmoss.com. That's JASONMOSS.com for all things what we're up to. We've got a link to our YouTube channel and podcast, The Transmission, which I'm super pumped about. We just launched this about 5 weeks ago. And on that podcast, I'm sharing daily downloads in more like inspired wisdom and thoughts about how to grow and expand from a place of alignment. So if this resonates, that podcast is your daily dose of inspiration and a great place to tap in on a deeper level. We've got our link to the collective community there as well as any other offers and things that we'll be running. Usually the website's the best place to check that out. So yeah, jasonmoss.com, and would love to hear what resonated. If you want to shoot me a message on Instagram, we have a link to that my profile on the site too. And I love hearing from folks. So let me know what landed, what resonated, and would love to connect with you.
Love it. And I listen to your podcast, so I highly recommend The Transmission
Oh,
by
thank you.
Jason Muss. Is there anything that I didn't ask that you'd like to end up with and share with the audience? Um, any last words before we wrap up?
I think for me, one of the things that I am continually learning is that it's safe to trust that inner pull. And it feels really scary to listen. And sometimes it feels like you're just walking through the dark. But what I've discovered again and again and again is that there's so much good on the other side of that. And I believe that every single one of us, and you who are listening to this, you have that pull. You know there's something deep within you. It's like when you connect, you're like, I feel this thread of something that's pulling me in this direction. And so I would just encourage you to listen.
Yes. Thank you for being who you are, Jason.
Thank you.